Hello, my name is John StFX. Welcome to this All 24 video. Today, Coach Waterman and I are joined by a very special guest, Coach Josh Lambert, who is currently an offensive assistant for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Thanks for being with us, Coach.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's I spent a lot of time out here in the AUS and coached with both of you guys there at X for a number of years. So appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely. A lot of fun to get you on here and talk some ball. So Coach is going to take us through an offensive concept. I'm just going to kind of give you the floor here, Coach, and we can get right into it.
Sure. We can just head to the next slide there.
Sounds good.
Basically, we're going to look at a couple different crossing routes and ways to implement them. Some things that are consistent, some things that stay consistent between the concepts, and ways to add and kind of build the play around them to a certain extent. The first thing here I talked about is big picture learning. So in this, you'll see, yes, it's labeled as R and W. There are letters in each of the circles. But when we teach this, it's important to learn the circles, not the letters. Understand what's going on with the concept. You'll see when we get to the film, a lot of times on these crossing routes, we use tight ends in one or two of the different positions. So they're coming from slightly different spots. Their responsibilities, their technique of their route stays the same through a number of things. So we teach it once and then adapt it through a number of different big picture scenarios, but it's still the same teaching. So circles, not letters. That's what I was talking about there. So the first thing to talk about here is the effector and the affected for. So in this case, the red route is the affected for, and the green route is the effector. It's specific words to keep it from, the rub guy or the guy giving the rub, or it just gives it a little bit more definition. So the effector and the affected for is what we talk about here. In this case, R mesh W, the effector is the first letter in the play call. The affected for is always the second one. Splits are consistent. They stay at a 5 split. Now to the boundary, that's 5 yards. To the field, it's a little bit wider because a 5 is kind of right down the middle of the goalpost or thereabouts, so it's a touch wider. But the idea is that no matter who we're meshing, how they're motioning there, what's going on around them, they're coming from 5 splits. So the timing of that is consistent for the cues. It's consistent for the receivers. Everything stays the same. And again, it's cross teaching. So you teach it once, and it works across multiple platforms essentially. One of the other big important pieces here is that first step. You'll see for each of them, it's specifically drawn straight up field. We talk about getting into your guy or attacking a man on for that first step, and then changing your angle to get to your rub and route. But that first step, for man more than zone, but as a solid fundamental, that first step is always upfield, and then you bend to your rep. So we'll see that. Who sets the depth on this? Now, this is something that I've learned in the last 6-8 months here since getting on with the Riders, and something I've changed the way I think about it, which I've taught it the opposite way for years. We've run a rubber play here at Acadia since 2003. I think it hasn't really changed a whole lot, as you guys can attest to, I would imagine. A couple of years ago, we added a dig from the number one field receiver over top of the whole thing. That was paradigm breaking. That was a whole big change, but the same inside receivers still have done the same thing for the last 17 years here, as like I said, you guys can know. And in that, we had the guy coming across. The affected for was the guy setting the depth for me always. He was setting the depth. The effector would work off him. The way they work it in Coach Moss's offense here that I've been learning is the complete opposite. The effector sets his depth at 5, comes across no matter what. The affected for takes that one step past that landmark and then works back underneath using his rub. So it allows the athlete with the man on him to make the determination, be a little bit more dynamic. And it allows the crosser who, again, if you take this to a different formation, a lot of times the effector is going to be the tight end, not necessarily you're not necessarily going to affect for the tight end. He's going to be the effector. So that guy we want to keep nice and consistent across at 5, let the athlete make the adjustments and lose his guy as he comes across. So that's a change in thought for me over the last couple of months, and I'm really on board with. I've been talking with Jeff here about incorporating that in some of the stuff they do here too. So that's who sets the depth. It's really the affected for, which is a little different for me. Next question would be how tight they come together. Again, the picture that I used to use, the analogy that I used to use, was almost click shoulder pads. So you come through, right? You're that tight. Now, Obviously, if you do click shoulder pads, you're too tight, and it's not a great analogy. So what we've got to now, or what I've added in now, is low 5 on your way through. As you come through, if you can just low 5, if you're close enough to do that in stride, you're not reaching out to the side, you're tight enough to get the rub. And again, as you guys know, and as I'm sure the people watching this, the reason they're watching this, is that being a good coach is being a good thief. It's stealing from the right places and bringing it together, right? So the whole low 5 thing, absolutely did not invent that. Stole that from the University of Indiana. They run a ton of these crossers and fences that we're going to look at here, and you can watch it on film. I was going to get some today, but it's in a different database for us. But you come through, and they low 5 on those every time to ensure that they're at their right split, the right distance. So it's a nice little thing I saw, and again, you integrate it and work with what you can.
Great teaching point, Coach. Great teaching point there. Yeah.
Yep. The other thing here we'll talk about is coming to a stop. So the effector comes to a stop after he's performed the rub here, the green route you can see. And there's a couple things that we get pretty specific about on that. First thing is the landmark. It's 2 yards outside the offensive tackle. You want to be consistent with where you end up. It gives you an opportunity to get the ball plugged on you and still get some yak before dealing with a flat defender, all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're asked to do. The other thing is the last 4 steps are your hardest and fastest, right? You want to make a whole lot of noise, really, duck the dimple in your helmet, make it look like you're speeding through. And then we talk about coming to a stop in one piece. So trying to stop essentially in a cylinder and not drift past that. Stop in that cylinder at your landmark and stay there. But your last 4 steps, sell it. You're flying all the way to and through the sideline on the guy to create that little bit of extra separation. So just different ways we come to a stop on this here. And then again, you're going to see that come up in another concept that we move to. So this is just another mesh. All the concepts still hold. In this case, we're just using a different motion. Again, big picture learning. Depending on what's going on around this could be a moon or a short moon or whatever we happen to call it. Everyone's got words for everything. Bringing the wide receivers down in a skating motion to, again, those same 5 splits. Those stay consistent, right? It's Z mesh X. So Z is the effector, X is the affected 4. That all stays consistent. The first step, even for the skate guys, as they skate down, they've got to square up and attack man on for that first step. We don't want them to just skate down and then banana into it and come straight across. You've got to push up for that step to create the timing and allow for everything else that's going on around. Right? So even when the wideouts are skating, they've still got to emphasize that step. Everything else stays the same as far as depths, as far as the low 5, coming to a stop, everything else. So it's just different athletes doing the same concept now. And again, I'm just showing the mesh portion around this. There's a multitude of, we're going to move on to a fence, which is, it just adds a portion to the mesh. It's a little bit bigger, and we've added that extra route in there. So the changes between a mesh versus fence that you kind of have to look at here. First thing is both guys stay on the move. Because of that additional route that's coming over the center there, we're going to talk about that in a second. Both guys stay on the move. The effector no longer settles, right? Everything else stays the same. Their splits stay the same. Their first step stays the same. Who's setting the depth, the low 5, everything else there is a mesh with the effector continuing on, no longer stopping. Now, the route we've added to that there is what we call an absolute squat. By absolute, what I mean is that it's at a landmark. There's no negotiation. So in this case, the squat is at 8 yards. In this case, it's over the center. So that is your landmark. Again, that's where you're working to, no negotiation. You see, again, that same first step upfield, get into your guide, just good habits, and then come. And we end up with essentially a 2-man rub. So this is a little bit closer to the rubber thing that we've been running here. But again, this is a little bit more hyper-defined even still. Now, the other thing that's important about this with the fence, you can move that squat to the other side. Here, it's nice and simple because it's one guy coming underneath the other 2. But you can just as easily move that fence to the other side and have the affected 4 work under the fence to his side and then the effector. So you can kind of move that around wherever. Again, very, very multiple concept. The fence tells these 3 guys what to do, and then you can tag on the other receivers. Yeah, we'll look at the drive here. All right, so everyone runs some version of this with the under and the in coming from the same side. But again, just looking at fundamentally technique-wise what we add to it and how we incorporate some of those same techniques that we teach in the mesh and bring them here. So the first thing is that the dig there, we call it basic, the 12-yard basic. Slight outside stem, just slight, and we'll see that on film. You don't have to go too far. That's to get a nice man rub, but it also creates a little bit of timing, creates that separation between the under and the over horizontally, and creates the horizontal separation. You've already got the vertical separation by the depths, but it creates a little bit more horizontal separation for you. And he is window shopping. That's what that little titch there means. And again, it could turn into, depending on where the window is, it could just turn into a deep hook, right? That titch doesn't have to be there. He could be shopping right at the very top of his rep. That just visually lets him know he's got that opportunity here. The route underneath that is what we call the drive route. It comes from a 7 split, the consistency there, the 5 and the 7 split, whether we're running it from 2 slots, whether we're running it from a skating receiver in a slot, whatever, those splits, again, stay consistent for timing and for technique. And he takes that, again, first step up field to allow Y to clear through as well as attack his man, and comes underneath. One of the video clips here, we get a good look at the stair step versus man. So if he feels he's in tight man, he can take it up vertically for a step or two and then break it hard horizontally to create and maximize his separation. But really, he's working to that 4-yard depth. He's not trying to get beyond that. And again, here, he's got the choice to stop. The decision is one that he's got. He has to make it, and he can't make it until he gets to the center. What that allows him to do is spend the first portion of that route really getting a good look ahead and understanding what's going on. But then his decision, he can't, the way we say it is, he can't even think about stopping until he's at the center. Not stop, but he can't even think about doing it until he's at the center. If he chooses to stop, if he's chosen to stop, again, he's hitting that exact same landmark, 2 yards outside the tackle, using the same technique, those last 4 steps, just burning, trying to show as fast as he can, and then coming to a stop all in one piece in that cylinder as close to 2 yards outside the tackle without drifting as he can. So there's the kind of crossover of the technique.
What's causing him to make that decision to stop, Coach? And is the quarterback, I assume, looking for the same thing?
Essentially, yeah. It's the quarterback's going to look ahead of him here. He's looking ahead. If he sees green grass, keep running. If he sees zone defenders out there, then that's his spot. And it's not a matter of you see a zone defender, you settle before him, wrap him, whatever. If you see zone, your spot is 2 yards outside that tackle. You see man, or at the very least, say it's a 4 and they've vacated that weak flat, and all you got is green in front of you, yeah, you keep running. So see green grass, run is how I kind of teach that. Okay, so this is just one route to build into other stuff that's going on that I really enjoy, and something, again, that I've just learned in the last couple months, and a way to build in a hot here. So inside, we've got a fence going on here. It could be anything with short in-breaking routes inside of it there. One of the favorite ones that we've got is a protection where that slot actually puts one hand on the D end, just touches him, and then continues on his under, and the wide out outside runs one of these bang digs. So the first 5 yards, first 5 by 5 are 45 degrees in. And during that section, as you can see there in red and italicized and with an exclamation point at it, it's tough to emphasize that anymore. Look, right? He's got to look in for that whole section and expect the ball right there. You've got to expect the ball. If it doesn't come, he continues on vertically, gets into his 12 to 15 yard, rolls into his dig there, and continues on his way. But it gives us that hot. So in this case, with all these crossers versus zero versus stick, yeah, you can throw a crosser hot, but you've got a lot of traffic in there, and especially you're creating so much more traffic for you now. But this bang dig out there is a wonderful hot for sting. So you build it in just to have that outlet. You don't need it. He continues on his way, and now takes advantage of that zone area on top of all the junk underneath. But if you need it, it's there, and it's a great plug shot. The quarterback will see it on film again. He takes quickest 3 or machine gun 3, whatever you want to call it. Just gets that third step into the ground as quick as he can and whistles it on him. So
when you go back to your sort of fence and mesh concept, and you have stay on the move guys, what do you tell them when they clear the box and they're coming across? What depth do they go once they get across? Do they just feel it, or do they climb? What do they do when they cross the box and stay on the move?
We have them keep it flat. Stay at your depth of 5. Don't. Now, again, that's something. The way we ran it here and run it here at Acadia is a little different. We do have that first guy go 45 degrees vertically, just a little tweak we added down the road. But in this case, where you've got the bang digs and other things happening around you, we just keep him flat and let him out leverage. Really, he's not going to be at the initial look on that. He'll be somebody that would come to later in the progression if we do. As you'll see in some of the film, the life of the effector is not necessarily a glamorous one. But if we do come to him, it's usually going to be late, and he'll have out leveraged whatever may be out there. So we keep him flat and wide.